This film, the third in the series on Laudato Si, will explore the greening of faith communities in Canada in response to the global climate crisis that has been so effectively presented by Pope Francis in the 2015 Papal Encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home. Initially, concern for global warming in the late 1980s recognized the impact of greenhouse gases caused by the burning of fossil fuels. In response to this crisis, some faith communities in Canada have begun to assume environmental leadership. Some began as early as 2006 by divesting fossil fuel stocks and building and adapting worship spaces and accommodations to reduce their carbon footprints. We will visit 8 of these eco-innovators and view them through the lens of Laudato Si, in the hope that you, the viewer, inspired by one of these stories, will find ways to mitigate the global climate crisis where you live, where you work, or where you worship. The IPCC, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, released in August 2021, declares in the words of UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres that we are in code red for humanity. This report must sound a death knell for coal and fossil fuels before they destroy the planet.
The report for the first time makes a quantitative address of the climate extremes. So basically we are increasing climate extremes very significantly and very fast. The heat wave in Canada, fires in California, floods in Germany, floods in China, droughts in central Brazil, make it very, very clear that climate extremes is having a very heavy toll in the socioeconomic system.
Following the release of the IPCC report in August 2021, almost 200 countries gathered a few months later in November in Glasgow, Scotland for COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. This was the first COP that explicitly named fossil fuels as a cause for climate change. However, the final communiqué at the end of the Glasgow conference proved to be contentious. According to press reports, rich countries refused language in the text calling for an equitable phase-out of all fossil fuels. Developing countries, burdened by the global North's delaying tactics, negotiated a change in the language of the Glasgow Climate Pact about the use of coal. The change was from phasing out to phasing down. Coal, the worst fossil fuel for greenhouse gases. Reducing greenhouse gases requires honesty, courage, and responsibility, above all on the part of those countries which are more powerful and pollute the most. Cutting down on fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas can be an individual as well as a collective commitment. But an even more effective strategy is the divestment of fossil fuel stocks that organizations, companies, and churches began in 2008, encouraged by climate activists. In 2007, a climate action organization called 350.org was founded. 350.org started the International Days of Climate Action. 350 refers to 350 parts per million, the safe concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Here, Professor Bill McGibbon, 350.org's co-founder, participates in a fossil fuel divestment panel sponsored by the Laudato Si movement.
Laudato Si itself was the most important document of this millennium about climate change and about a large number of other topics. But it allowed everyone to begin putting forward a series of action steps. And on those action steps, divestment is one of the easiest and most straightforward. And so it's really important that that example continue because it's being copied by people all over the world. It's a really powerful tool. And one way you can tell that for sure is that the fossil fuel companies hate it. In fact, Shell Oil, which I think is the second biggest oil company in the world, said in its annual report a year ago that divestment had become a material risk to its business. but it's a reminder of just how effective this is. Effective for two reasons, really. One, it takes away the social license of these companies. It's been a key part of helping people everywhere understand their role, not only in causing the climate crisis with their product, but in prolonging it with this endless disinformation campaign that they've carried out for the last 30 years. The second reason that it's effective is, and this becomes clearer every time this gets, movement gets larger, is that it's now constraining their ability to access capital for expansion. And this is entirely clear now in the coal industry and increasingly true in oil and gas. There are just too many funds, too many players that won't any longer support them financially. I'm no theologian, but it's nice to live in a moment when we can move from energy from down below to energy from up above, and do it in ways that help us financially, practically, morally, in health terms, in every other way. If you wanted proof that the Holy Spirit was at work in the world, one could do worse than think about the fact that it's a Swedish schoolgirl, a young Swedish schoolgirl, and a not so young Argentinian Pope that are helping drive the movement forward to deal with this gravest of problems.
Encouraged by organizations like Faith and the Common Good, faith communities in Canada are responding to the environmental crisis described in United Nations studies, calls to action by climate activists, and Indigenous spiritual leaders. Among them is the Roman Catholic organization, the Laudato Si Movement Canada, which began as the Global Catholic Climate Movement. These faith communities are making structural, architectural, and educational commitments to care for our common home. These are some of their stories. The Sisters of Providence of St. Vincent de Paul in Kingston, Ontario, joined 350.org in 2009 and divested their fossil fuel portfolio.
If you look at an impact of just the sisters' divestment, you may think that that wouldn't make on the global scale, a huge difference. And I think sometimes we think when we drive our own car that it doesn't really make a difference. But when more and more companies and congregations and organizations divest, then we will reach a tipping point and it will make a huge difference. So financially, sometimes you hear people being concerned that it's not a wise financial decision, but it actually now when there are a lot of industry shifts away from fossil fuels, it's actually quite a good financial decision.
In 2019, in a book entitled Falter, Has the Human Game Begun to Play Itself Out?, Professor McGibbon names the two most transformative inventions of the 20th century. One is the solar panel, and the other is nonviolent movement for change. Bridget Doherty explains how the Sisters of Providence engaged in the nonviolent movement for change on significant issues like climate change and poverty.
In 1995, the sisters started organizing silent vigils in front of Kingston City Hall that took place every Friday at noon for half an hour. And that vigil actually continued for 20 years. And that was organized to keep in the front of minds of politicians and policymakers the plight of the poor, inequality, issues of like climate change and water issues, Indigenous rights. We sometimes chose different themes according to the signs of the times, to what was going on at that moment in society. But we were there, rain, shine, winter. We never missed one Friday for 20 years. And we would have people stop and talk to us. And there were great opportunities to educate people, but also to have conversations, including with politicians. And sometimes we invited politicians from all political parties and all political levels. So that was, those events really make a difference in society.
There is an urgent need to develop policies so that in the next few years, the emission of carbon dioxide and other highly polluting gases can be drastically reduced. For example, substituting for fossil fuels and developing sources of renewable energy. The United Church of Canada has a national program called Faithful Footprints, which is designed to provide grant money to its approximately 500 congregations to help reduce their carbon footprint. Here at Woodlawn United in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, the congregation opted for solar panels on its south-facing roof. Barry Zwicker, chair of the Sustainability Committee at Woodlawn United, explains why and then how it was done.
And a lot of it comes back through our creed. One of the statements in the creed for the United Church indicates our understanding of our earth and our respect for the earth and doing things to improve how we treat our earth versus being detrimental to how our earth goes forward. So generally the United Church is saying we simply need to be more respectful to the land and to our environment than we have been in the last 125 years. And they have proven that by putting their money where their mouth is, if you like, in terms of funding a number of projects through their Faithful Footprints projects. What we're looking at here are the inverters. The inverters gather the electricity, the direct current electricity that's developed by the panels on the roof. It comes down through our internal wall system into each of these inverters. The inverters actually take the direct current that is being generated by the panels and converts it into a usable form, alternating current that we use for everything that we operate that's electrically run in the building. So we have a meter outside, that's a digital meter, and that meter will actually run backwards in effect, and instead of drawing or measuring the amount of power that we're using, it will measure the amount of power that we're putting back into the grid. And like everybody else, we get bills every 2 months, and it shows us how much energy we've actually used, and it shows us how much energy we've created through our solar system. And if we are generating more than we're using, it shows us a credit. If we're using more at any one point than we're generating, then it shows that we owe Nova Scotia Power an amount. Over the space of 12 months, over the last couple of years, we have been able to generate more power from our solar system than we actually use in the building. So we have had credits at the end of each 12-month period for the last 3 years. There are 135, I think it is, or 139 panels on that roof. At the time that we were dealing with a couple of potential installers on this system, one of the installers came up with the idea that maybe we should incorporate the shape of a cross in our panels as we put on the roof. And that was picked up very, very quickly by our trustees and those of us who are involved with the solar project. So the design that we kind of went out to tender on included the shape of the cross as you see it from the outside. And it may have cost us 1 or 2 panels in terms of the efficiency of the system, but in reality, it makes a very strong statement, we believe. And shortly after we put it up, we lit that area of the cross so that at night you were able to see the outline of the cross on those panels. And during the day, it's there for anybody walking by. So there is no question that what the basis of Woodlawn United Church is all about.
Loreto College, a residence for women on the University of Toronto campus, is another example of the solar panel contributing to the reduction of a carbon footprint. In 2009, the Sisters of Loreto retrofitted this student residence with rooftop solar water heating panels. Sister Yvonne Hunter, the provincial at the time, explains the motivation to retrofit this 50-year-old building.
The initial impetus was to upgrade the infrastructure of the building. But our prime motivation in how we chose to do it was the contribution that we could make to the environment. And that was because, as I said, we were preaching it here at Mary Ward Centre for Social Faith and Justice. We were preaching it up at our ecology centre in Keswick at Loretto Mary Home. And we had an NGO office at the UN where I was the rep, and we were big into the Commission on Sustainable Development. So we did the whole retrofit of the whole building, which included solar panels, which heat the hot water for the building, which houses about 200 people with a full kitchen. And we did upgrade and put in new windows, which helped with the dust and the noise, as well as being, more efficient windows. We put in an HVAC system with the latest technology, and we redid the plumbing, electrical, HVAC, everything, everything that we could do. They tell us it was the equivalent to removing, I think, 35 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, the equivalent to planting 475,000 trees and taking 200 cars off the road. And we also had a model in one of our former students from Kenya, Wangari Maathai, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for her contribution to the environment through her Green Belt movement in Africa. We need to be stewards of the planet, not destroyers of the planet. And we knew that we needed to step up to the plate and do what we were preaching. And if you look around, that was 2009, still not a solar panel in sight when you look from our roof across St. Michael's, Victoria College, the legislature and everything. So other people, we hoped that other people would follow suit, but they haven't so far.
Lux Nova is a solar stained glass project at Regent College, an interdenominational theological school on the campus of the University of British Columbia. It is the first use of electrovoltaic cells embedded in stained glass in Canada. The electricity generated from the voltaic cells lights the LED column illuminating the tower at night. The library is below ground, and the tower helps to cool it. Sarah Hall, the Canadian stained glass artist, explains.
I would say that solar glass is a revolutionary transformation of stained glass. And this glass incorporates working solar cells along with painted artwork. There's a photovoltaic array, which is embedded between two panes of glass, and it converts sunlight into electricity, and we have no greenhouse gas emissions. The community at Regent College was deeply committed to sustainable design and fully supportive of an innovation or an innovative direction for the artwork. And the title Lux Nova means new light. So for the artwork, I created 4 layers. I have solar cells, 12 dichroic glass crosses, the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, and a painted layer representing a waterfall of light. In the library, there's a monitor that shows how much energy is being collected. And the tower is open at its base, so the community can see the full workings of the solar system, the battery bank, the controller, the inverter, and the LED light column. The energy generated is stored in the battery bank and used at night to illuminate the wind tower. And there is a 2-hour cycle of ever-changing color. And I can tell you, the first time I saw the piece working, like creating light, I was absolutely thrilled.
Asked about the future of electrovoltaic cells in stained glass, Sarah challenges other stained glass artists to combine beauty and function.
I felt that it was an opportunity to use light. Well, we're not just using light, we're actually creating light. And it was an opportunity to do this. It was kind of the first time that our medium wouldn't simply have light passing through it to bring the beauty of color and light. It was creating it. And I thought, this is an incredible contribution. We can turn a corner here. We can turn a corner in the whole field of stained glass by creating light, showing that something is beautiful and meaningful, and we can do good. We can make something beautiful for the world that is useful, and it's a bit like a beacon. It will help show the way.
This is Villa Angela in Chatham, Ontario, the mother house of the Ursuline Sisters of Chatham. It was completed in 2006, and it achieved the gold standard in LEED, or Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. One of the unique innovations was that the building was designed with ground source, or geothermal, heating and cooling, which dramatically reduces the use of non-renewable energies like fossil fuels. There are 27 vertical wells dug 320 feet deep into the ground. A solution of water and antifreeze circulates in the network of pipes, drawing heat from the earth in the winter and, in the summer, offloading heat to cool the building. Sister Sheila McKinley explains the decision to opt for geothermal.
We've had a long history of being close to the land. When our houses were first established, here and in other places in Canada, we grew our own crops and we planted fruit trees. So the land is important to us. In the large places where we've lived, in Windsor and Chatham and London, we've had huge pieces of property, and on those properties we grew our own crops. And so we were aware of the importance of the land. When we came to the decision about the geothermal, before that, we had to make a decision about our mother house. It had become too huge. It was too hard to maintain and to heat. And so we had a large community conversation that took place over a period of time. And in the end, we decided that it was time to move to a smaller place. And the one thing that all 136 of us agreed on was that it should be as energy efficient, as earth-friendly as possible. Now, even before we came to that decision, we were conscious of the need to be good to the earth. In our community meetings, even in 1989, we borrowed the words from, attributed to Chief Seattle, the earth is precious to God. And to harm the earth is to heap contempt on the Creator. And that's been a guide for us for many, many years. We certainly recognize the importance of being kind to the earth, and also of having that outward focus, so that any resources that we save in this kind of endeavor, we can use those resources more broadly for our mission, reaching out to the most vulnerable areas of society.
We need a dialogue which includes everyone, since the consequences affect us all. In Laudato Si, Pope Francis writes, "I wish to address every person living on this planet." And in that spirit, this film will explore the response to the global climate crisis by other faith communities. The Jafari Community Centre in Richmond Hill, Ontario, a mosque that is already an eco-friendly facility with solar panels providing much of its electricity, includes this beautiful sanctuary, which is a meeting place for up to 3,000 worshippers each evening during the holy month of Ramadan. During this high holiday, after prayer, worshippers break their daily fast with food and drink prepared and served by volunteers. Starting in 2013, members of the congregation formed an eco-team to help educate the congregation to become, in the words of its own mission statement, environmentally conscious and aware by reducing the food waste generated by this evening meal. With the help of the PowerPoint presentation which the eco-team developed to educate the congregation about food waste, Shalina Jessa explains how, over a few years, they tackled waste reduction during the holy season of Ramadan.
A couple of innovations we've used to try and help reduce waste would be bring your own. So we had the bring your own mug campaign, get people to bring their own mugs for tea. Bring your own kit, which would have bring your own plates, etc. for food to break fast. Then we had the express line. The express line is basically we set up a designated line for people who brought their own. It was shorter and it was faster, and it worked wonderfully because at the start of it, it was the shorter line. By the end of the month, it was so big that we actually had to create 2 express lines. So the number of people bringing their own plates had sort of increased. Then we had the eco stations. And the eco stations are basically where everybody would bring their plates at the end after eating to scrape the compost and stack the plates. So it would sort of streamline. People would see what they were throwing away. That would actually give them a visual of how much waste they were throwing or not, and then stacking their clean plates. So again, another visual that my plate is clean. There's no food on it. It's all been sort of eaten, and stack everything. So it was easier for the volunteers to take the plates and either wash them, or if they're compostable plates, to stack and close them up so they'd stay compact and take the least amount of space. Especially with the eco stations, we saw that the waste reduction through the years was better. I mean, we'd have less and less actual food waste in the compost bins. The plates would be the same, but the food waste would be reduced. At the start of the journey, 2013, and what started this journey was seeing like 20-30 black bags just sitting there waiting to be thrown out full of garbage. Full of compost as well as styrofoam. By 2017, those bags had reduced to like 2-3 max, and the rest was all compostable or reused clean plates.
Scripture was an important motivator for Shalina and her eco-team as she shares some passages that inspired the congregation to dramatically reduce food waste.
When we're breaking our fast, it would be ironic if we waste food. And these are the themes that we've tried to use within sort of the multimedia promotions and announcements within the community to try and sort of reduce waste. And we've used quotes from the Quran. One of them in particular is chapter 7, verse 31. O children of Adam, put on your adornment on every occasion of prayer and eat and drink, but do not waste. Indeed, he does not like the wasteful. There's another ayat from the Quran that says that, a couple of ayats actually, that talk about humans being the stewards or the vicegerents on earth. And it's sort of a responsibility for us. Like, we've been given this bountiful, beautiful earth, and it's a gift to us to preserve. There's another hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him, that says, take care of the earth, for it is your mother. And what more can you get from a mother? That's that unconditional gifts that you get from your mother. And it's your duty to respect and love your mother. So all the signs, all the scriptures talk about how the earth was created, all the bounties, the mountains, the fruits, the animals, all of these are mentioned in scriptures. And again, this is all part of earth. And I think all these things run very, very similar. I think between the three Abrahamic faiths, there's a lot more that is common between us than there is uncommon. And I think climate change is something that I find is bringing us together. And it all sort of ties in to taking care of our common home.
Everything is related, and we human beings are united as brothers and sisters on a wonderful pilgrimage, woven together by the love God has for each of his creatures, and which also unites us in fond affection with Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother River, and Mother Earth. Shoresh is a Jewish nature-based program operating in the Greater Toronto Area since 2009, and here at Bella Farm in Hillsburg, about 100 kilometers north of the city. Shoresh, which means roots in Hebrew, offers Jewish community members opportunities to be responsible stewards of the natural world. Risa Allison Cooper, Executive Director, explains.
So Shoresh's mission is to lead, inspire, empower our community to be Shomrei Adama, which translates to protectors of the earth. And ultimately, what we are seeking to do through all of our programs and activities is to demonstrate that sustainability is a Jewish value, and that part of what it means to live an active and engaged Jewish life is to live a life that is in right relationship, that is in balance between humans and the natural world. So Shoresh is celebrating our 13th anniversary this year. We have three main pillars of activities: awareness, action, and advocacy. And in terms of what that actually looks like on the ground, we run nature-based Jewish programming. So we have the Shoresh Outdoor School, which is our after-school program that bridges Jewish learning with the great outdoors. We have Camp Shoresh, which is a full summer program for children in SK through grades 3. That's similar to the Shoresh Outdoor School, weaves together Jewish teachings with nature-based education. We offer Yesod, which is a year-long B'nai Mitzvah coming of age program that really explores Jewish ancestral teachings and how that relates to helping our young adults form meaningful relationships between one another, between them and the natural world, and also between them and their ancestral traditions. We also have a line of sustainable Jewish products. It's a social enterprise that goes back to support our educational initiatives. So we sell honey and beeswax candles that come from our apiary. We have I think 10 hives at Bela Farm, which is a 100-acre farm project. We're one of the main partners that are helping to jointly steward and animate the space. And we also do a ton of programming with different community organizations and community partners, all of which weave together people, land, and Jewish traditions.
Jewish scripture and tradition exhort ecological responsibility as Risa reflects on the source of this commitment to the natural world.
So in the Torah, in the Hebrew Bible, we're told in Sefer Bereshit, in the book of Genesis, that God takes Adam, the first human being, places Adam in the Garden of Eden, and gives Adam a dual mitzvah, like a dual commandment, le'ovda u'leshomra. Your job is to work the land and also to protect the land. So right off the bat, we have in our creation myth an understanding that the role of humans is to be responsible caretakers of the earth that is providing for us, and we in turn need to make sure that we are protecting the earth and its resources. In terms of Jewish teachings as relates to the Jewish people in particular, Jewish tradition is a land-based tradition. It is a tradition with deep ecological and agricultural roots, and we see this through our calendar and its holidays, through our rituals, We see this through the Jewish agricultural laws that are outlined in the Torah. A friend of mine calls the Torah the Jewish Farmer's Almanac because it is very clear that there are rules that govern our relationship with food, and food being one lens of how we understand our relationship with the earth. And so I think that within Jewish tradition, there is so much history in terms of our relationship with the earth, and there's so much wisdom that we can draw forward into today to understand how do we, in a contemporary, and for us living in North America on Turtle Island, in a diasporic context, how do we live in a balanced relationship with the natural world?
Here on the shores of Lake Ontario in Cobourg is Villa St. Joseph, operated by the Sisters of St. Joseph in Canada, where a new kind of theology is being taught. It is called Eco-theology, and it involves an exploration of the relationship between faith and ecological science. Students live at Villa St. Joseph, study eco-theology, and practice the fundamentals of organic gardening in the market garden right on the villa property. The course syllabus describes it as acquiring skills for living more lightly within our village earth. Sister Linda Gregg, the co-director of the program, explains.
It came out of my Christian tradition, but it came out of something that grows beyond the Christian tradition, which is inclusive of the Christian tradition, because that is the root of all religions, the earth. And we need to seek in each of our own religions where the roots of the earth are. And so many religions are beginning to find that they too had a story about a garden or about creation, or some of their myths and legends were to do with understanding the balance, the harmony between the earth and the whole universe, that we begin to see ourselves a part of the whole. So yes, it is a program at St. Michael's University, and it is a credit in an eco-theology. So it has roots in the Christian tradition, but it expands from that into other understandings that are central to all peoples of the earth. We need to take the message to all peoples that we have the one earth and that we need to be able to hold her together in our arms. Faith is not irrelevant. Faith has its own place to play, and it has its own cultural interpretations. It has its own unique understandings, such as Christianity with the incarnation of Jesus, and the way that the elements are a part of who we are. God is incarnated into creation through Jesus in our story, in our understanding, and that is revelatory, that we would have a God who is a part of the earth and a part of us in all our journey. I come from a background of farming, market garden farming. So I grew up knowing how to put my hands in the soil and knowing the joy of growing something and seeing it come to flower. And yes, there are struggles with pests and diseases and finding harmony in the garden. And that's what regenerative gardening and organic farming is all about. We need nourishment from the earth because we are earth. We need the calcium, we need the iron, we need the elements that are within the soil. And when we have students coming here, they take time during their studies because we do the academic. We show how in the Christian tradition there is ample evidence that we have misinterpreted a lot of the scripture in the beginning of the Bible especially, that we have forgotten that we have roots in the goodness of the earth because God said it is good. We have not listened to the earth. We have not heard her cries, just as we have not heard the cries of the poor. But the cries of the poor and the cry of the earth are one. And that's what Pope Francis has so clearly said in Laudato Si. And it's up to each of us in our own way to find that place of reconciliation in the garden planet that we have.
These stories of caring for this fragile planet are a few of the many stories across the world where people of faith have moved from words to action. the time is running short as we hear some familiar voices encouraging us to use whatever influence we have to protect our common home.
We are the ones who need to take the decisions, and we are the ones who need to be brave and ask the difficult questions to ourselves, like what do we value? Are we ready to take action to ensure future and present living conditions? So I hope that this can be a wake-up call, and that it really gives perspective, and that it once again can be a reminder that the climate crisis has not gone away. It's only escalating, and it's only growing more intense by the hour.
The Laudato Si action platform, which was launched in November 2021, is an invitation to institutions, communities, and families to make a commitment to concrete actions to care for Mother Earth. This 7-year journey is guided by 7 Laudato Si goals, many of which have found concrete expression in the faith communities we have visited in this film.
Lavorare insieme, solo così potremo creare il futuro che vogliamo, un mondo più inclusivo, fraterno, pacifico e sostenibile. In un cammino che durerà per 7 anni, ci lasceremo guidare da 7 oggettivi della Laudato Si che ci indicheranno la direzione mentre perseguiamo la visione dell'ecologia integrale. La risposta al grido della terra, la risposta al grido dei poveri, l'economia ecologica, l'adozione di uno stile di vita semplice, l'educazione ecologica, la spiritualità ecologica e l'impegno comunitario. C'è speranza. Tutti possiamo collaborare, ognuno con la propria cultura ed esperienza, ciascuno con le proprie iniziative e capacità, perché la nostra madre terra ritorni alla sua originale bellezza e la creazione torni a risplendere secondo il progetto di Dio. Dio benedica ognuno di voi e benedica la nostra missione di ricostruire la nostra casa comune. Grazie.